peppers. Starting off, you've got your basic green bell pepper, so we'll be growing a couple of those just to have them. Got some saved jalapeno seeds from 2 years ago. I bought a jalapeno plant. I got 1 jalapeno out of it. I saved the seeds, however.
Jalapeno peppers.
Actually, in Spanish, the J is pronounced more like an H.
Sorry. With jalapeno peppers.
Next up, we've got the lesia pepper. This is allegedly the sweetest pepper you can get. I'm not a huge pepper fan, but once ripe, I even like this pepper myself without doing anything to it. Next, we've got the Lichhauer paprika pepper. This is a spicy paprika. I'm probably spelling it incorrectly. And the cayenne long slim pepper. Growing that for the first time. Spicy peppers, primarily growing them to make powders. Next up, onions. First time growing real onions this year, so I'm trying the Utah sweet Spanish onion. Seeds were started for this about a month, 2 months ago, so those have been growing in my grow tent over the last period of time. Next up, the Bianco di Maggio onions. Again, these have been growing in my grow tent for over a month now. They'll be transplanted outside in the coming weeks once there's a little less snow. Next up, we have the Ambition onion, also known as a shallot, or an oblong onion. Depends on where you are. Very controversial. Nobody can agree on what's an onion and what's a shallot. We also have the Zerbrum shallot. Hope I'm spelling that correctly. Bunching onions. This is a nice green onion, strong flavor. I'll be trying some Lancelot leeks as well. Those have been growing for over a month. In the other category, if you will, at least that's how I sort them, Rainbow Swiss chard. I'll be growing this again this year, of course. Is it a lettuce? I don't know. I don't consider it a lettuce. Frise endive. Don't consider it a lettuce, even though it probably is and looks like a lettuce, but it tastes very different than a typical lettuce. I'm not typically an endive fan, however I grew this one over the winter, and it's not too bad. You got your arugula, delicious when these are picked as almost microgreens. They have a very light, strong, nutty flavor. Not spicy at all. They only get spicy once they get taller, and then, oh boy. Next up, lamb lettuce, also known as corn salad, growing this for the first time this year. These next two, I don't anticipate having a good harvest out of them. I'm growing them because they look really cool. First off, we've got the Hill Country Red Okra. I don't even like okra. And the Tavor Artichoke. If I get to harvest these, great. Otherwise, I'm just happy to see the flowers. Final decisions have not been made on what squashes to grow this year. However, I will absolutely be growing the Black Beauty zucchini. This is your basic zucchini. It's tasty. I'll also be growing the Romanesco zucchini. Slightly nuttier flavor than your Black Beauty zucchini. I may grow, but haven't yet decided, the butternut squash. Possibly also the King Bush acorn squash. I will more than likely be growing the early prolific straight neck squash. I've also got one last spaghetti squash seed. So only one of these squashes will be grown this year because they take up a lot of room. I haven't decided if I'm growing pumpkins this year. However, if I do, it'll be probably the Jardale pumpkin and or the Pepitas pumpkin. The Pepitas pumpkin is apparently one of the best for roasted seeds, which I'm a huge fan of. The Jardale pumpkin is also apparently very good for cooking with, so we'll be giving it a try. Beans. As always, we'll be growing the rattlesnake bean. This is a popular Poland vining bean. I will be trying for the first time the Kentucky blue beans. I asked the question on Reddit, and the general reply from people was that this is their preferred bean to grow. So another first timer, more for baked beans. We're trying out the Mayflower bean and the painted pony bean. In addition, I have here some Monte Gusto beans. I grew these last year. These are a vining pole bean. They are yellow, and they're thinner than your typical yellow bean, and they're also longer. All I am saying is, give peas a chance.
You need to leave!
So I'll be trying a few. We've got the blue shelling snow pea. Why? Because it's blue, and I should be able to find it easily. We've got the golden sweet pea. Why? Because it's yellow, and I should be able to find it easily. The spring blush pea, once again, an interesting color, easy to find. Hopefully these taste good, and if they do, we'll grow them every year because it would be nice to have easy to find peas. Next up, the alderman peas. These I am growing primarily because they were recommended by Charles Dowding, and I'm a fan. And finally, these are saved from last year. These are called Miss Van's climbing peas. These were great. They grew to about 5 feet tall, generated a lot of very large sweet pods. Next up, tomatoes. Starting with your cherry tomato, we have the ever popular sun gold tomato. Unfortunately, it splits very easily, so just in case to have some extra cherries on site, I'm just growing some generic red cherry tomatoes. I'm also growing the yellow pear tomato. These aren't quite cherry tomatoes, maybe about 2.5 cherry tomatoes stacked on top of each other size. Following this, possibly for the last time, I'll be trying the Paul Robson tomato. It has not grown amazingly well in my garden. However, in partial shade, this seems to grow a little bit better, so I'll be trying it one more time in a less sunny area and see how it goes. Next, possibly for the last time again, the black from Tula. This has historically not grown great for me, but I really like how it looks, so I'll be trying it one more time. Next up, black crim tomato. I did grow this last year, however, I topped it, or rather cut the top off, a little too early. And so for the rest of the season, it just kind of stood there, not dying, but it didn't generate any tomatoes. So next up, Sheboygan tomato. Next up, Roma tomatoes, classic, never an issue growing these ones, abundant. I'm probably going to grow most of the remaining seeds this year. I want to make a lot of tomato sauce this fall. The San Marzano tomato, also very good for making tomatoes, a semi-determinate plant. It produces all year long, a little slower than a regular indeterminate plant, and it also doesn't get very tall. I might actually try growing this one indoors over the winter next year. And lastly, in terms of sauce tomatoes, we have the Amish paste. This one is probably my favorite all-around tomato. It's great for making sauce. It's also pretty good for slicing. I'll be trying what was a free seed, the Cherokee purple tomato. Another free one, the Sky Kamish tomato. And finally, I've got 2 dwarf varieties. We've got the Clare Valley tomato and the Sleeping Lady dwarf tomato, mostly because I'm interested in trying dwarf tomatoes. A lot of the other tomatoes are just to determine once and for all if I will continue growing them again in future years, so that I can start thinning down my seed collection. I know that sounds shocking. I'm only going to grow one type of radish, the early scarlet globe radish. I have about 10 varieties of radish seeds, however, some of them bolt really fast, and I know they grow fast, but I don't know. Radishes just aren't as exciting as they should be. A few beets. We'll be trying the golden beet. I've heard good things. The Chioggia, maybe Bassano beets. They look cool. And your basic Detroit red dark beets. Herbs. Basil eladia. This is your Genovese type of basil. I'll primarily be using them to make pesto this year. Big fan of pesto. Made some with pecans last year instead of pine nuts. Heck of a lot cheaper. Tastes pretty good. I'll be growing some purple Ruffles basil. This basil is nice. It seems to have a good heat tolerance and doesn't bolt very easily. So it stayed nice and leafy throughout the entire season. Tastes very similar to a normal basil. The leaves might be a bit less tender, however. I'll be trying some lime basil this year as well. Sweet dark opal basil. This one tends to go to flower very easily, however, the flowers look absolutely lovely. So that one is used more as an ornamental. We'll be starting some parsley, although I already have some growing in my grow tent over winter. And we've got some German wintertime. From what I've read online, this is the better time if you want to keep the herbs. Creeping time is lovely, but the leaves are quite tiny in it. Cilantro genesis. I didn't think I liked cilantro until I actually tasted it, and for me at least, it doesn't taste like soap, so that's a win. We've also got some Greek oregano. This is also the preferred culinary oregano. I will not be planting mint this year, however I did plant this seed last year, took some cuttings, and I've been growing them over winter, so we'll be transplanting that back outside in the spring. Dill. After growing this for 3 to 4 years and having issues actually starting the seeds, I'm no longer starting them. However, they do self-seed very easily. As such, every year I'm guaranteed a dozen free dill plants in my garden without planting anything. Next we have rosemary. Seeds for all of these have now been planted. And that's it. Lettuces. Hansen improved crisp head lettuce. This is more of a heading lettuce, icebergy type of lettuce. I haven't grown that type before, so I'm looking forward to that. Another similar type of head lettuce, tombstone lettuce. Paris Island cause lettuce. This is a romaine lettuce. It looks like romaine. It's very romaine-y. Next we have the bronze mignonette lettuce. This one apparently has a pretty decent heat tolerance, so hopefully something I can grow throughout the summer. Or we'll be growing some random lettuce, gourmet mix in this case. I probably have a dozen or more packets of random lettuce seeds, as they tend to be included for free in packages. And I will be growing a spinach, the Bloomsdale long-standing spinach. This was apparently quite good eaten raw or cooked. Cucumbers. Starting off, we have the Marketmore 76 cucumber. Following this, we've got the tasty green cucumber. Next, we've got the often controversial Mexican sour gherkin cucamelon. I'm a big fan of these. I grew them for the first time last year, made sure they had their own container, and they grew very well. Their vines are quite aggressive. Next up, the Armenian yard-long cucumber. Isn't actually a cucumber, but it tastes like a cucumber, looks mostly like a cucumber, and grows like a cucumber, but it's not a cucumber. Great thing with this one, you can leave it on the counter for over a week, it won't get all shrivelly. Next up, growing this one just because it looks interesting, we've got the Punakira cucumber, and lastly another interesting one, the White Wonder cucumber. Monica cucumber. Although I won't be growing this one this summer, I do grow it over the winter inside, so if you're looking for an indoor cucumber to grow, this one's great. It's self-pollinating, the plant doesn't get too tall. Carrot shelf life is not very long, as such I will be growing all the carrots I have this year. So we've got the Little Fingers carrots for a smaller type of carrot. We've got the Royal Chantenay carrot for a stubby thick carrot. Has a pretty strong flavor to it. The Imperator carrot for a more classic carrot type. The Red Atomic carrot because it's red. The Purple carrot, you guessed it, because it's purple. And finally, the Black Nebula carrot because it's nebulous. Next, brassicas. Brassicas? Anyways, we have some dinosaur kale. We'll also be growing some blue-curled Scotch kale. I've also got some Siberian blue kale, however, I do not have any seeds left for that one, as I just planted them all. Next up, we've got the Katerina cabbage. This is a 50 to 60 day cabbage, so if you can't handle a longer growing cabbage, this is perfect. Next, we've got the Early Jersey Wakefield cabbage. This is a longer growing cabbage, however it's still faster than some other cabbages, and it can handle a few frosts. I'll be trying some Waltham 29 broccoli. This is your pretty standard broccoli, however it has a very short broccoli to flower time period, so pick it when it's ready, because you wait a day or two and suddenly big yellow flowers. And finally we've got the purple sprouting broccoli. I've actually planted this one already. You can see it in the background there. It's been growing for quite some time. I'll be transplanting it outside in the next few weeks, probably. Here we go. Purple sprouting broccoli. Lastly, in the brassicas. This is not for eating, however it looks very interesting, so we'll be growing the flowering cabbage for the fall. I won't be planting those until later on. What flowers am I growing this year? Starting off, we have the Salvia St. John's Fire. Grew it last year. Lovely plant. Next, as a first timer, we have the Lime Envy Zinnia, green zinnia. First time growing this year. Looking forward to it. Next we have the Cinderella Peach Zinnia. Grown last year, the straw flower. Really cool flowers. They flower for the entire season and have a very interesting straw-like sound to them. We have the Fresco Mixed Dahlias, another that I grew last year. Nice little yellow and red flowers. Another first-timer. Love Lies Bleeding Amaranth. Apparently it's edible, but I'm growing it because of the looks. Orchid Cream Nasturtiums. Grew these last year. They're quite lovely flowers. Bloomed all summer long. First-timer for nasturtiums, the Phoenix Nasturtium. Tiger Eye Red Pansy. I planted the seeds for this about a week and a half ago. Next up, Johnny Jump Up Violas. These have been planted in prior seasons and they will be planted again. In fact, the seeds were started last week, indoors. Gazania Frosty Kiss Mix. I've grown this last year and once again another very lovely looking flower. Clear crystal purple shades Alyssum. I've heard these are great at attracting hoverflies and other bugs, so I will be planting a lot of these this year. Following this first time, the Violet Aster, just because it's pretty. Next up, first time, Dwarf Razzler Red Cosmo. Looking forward to these ones. Cosmos are usually pretty good. We've got the Dwarf Purity White Cosmo. These were grown last year. They weren't quite dwarf size. They were about 4 feet tall, so very pretty. Next we've got the Dahlia Mix Coralette Dandy. We'll also be trying some Cactus Mix Zinnias. We've got the 4 o'clock mix. These are very pretty. They flower most of the summer and have, interestingly, they do open up the flowers around 4 o'clock. However, Pacific time. I live in an Eastern time zone. So these tend to actually open up their flowers after sunset, during the later part of the summer. Also, I'll be growing the Black-Eyed Susan vine. This is not a Black-Eyed Susan plant, but it apparently looks like Black-Eyed Susan, and it's a vine. Seeds planted this morning. We've got the Bells of Ireland. After being cold stratified for 3 weeks, they were planted in soil this morning. Here's hoping these survive. Green flowers. Only a few perennials are being grown this year. One of them being started is the white echinacea. I also planted several bulbs and some seeds last fall that will hopefully grow this year. Here's a few of them. Spring should be quite lovely this year, with any luck. And lastly, in the flowers, I haven't decided if I'm growing sunflowers yet, but if I do, it's between these ones. We've got the Evening Sun Sunflower, Velvet Queen Sunflower, Chocolate Cherry Sunflower, Sun Gold Tall Sunflower. This one is super cool. Autumn Beauty Sunflower, possibly the Sunspot Dwarf Sunflower. This one apparently creates very large heads. However, it only grows to about 1.5 feet tall. Squirrels are able to reach 1.5 feet really easily. As such, my dwarf sunflower plants last year were all decimated. So if I do grow it this year, which would be for the seeds, I'll ensure it's properly secured. I went a little marigold crazy last year and grew about 8 varieties of marigold. However, this year I'm going to go with just the marigold sushi or suki, as I have enough other flowers, I think.